you're a business owner, and now just because a divorce is happening, you feel like you could lose everything. You're facing trouble, you're facing uncertainty, you don't know what's gonna happen to your business. It's taking you all these years to build. What exactly is gonna go on? Everything's up for grabs. Well, it doesn't have to be. I'm Brent Boyer, I'm an attorney here in Metro Detroit, and we help men, fathers just like you, who own a business and are going through a divorce, and we can help you knock this thing out. You don't have to lose everything just because there's a divorce happening. You know, there are 5 strategies here that we have that you can use to protect your business and the future of that business. As a business owner, divorce presents a unique, devastating type of a threat. It's not just a personal crisis, it's a financial one that can jeopardize years of your hard work, compromise proprietary information, risk your very future of the company that you've built. To begin with, you need to establish that your business is separate property. You don't want to have a jointly owned business with someone that really doesn't do anything. They don't work for your business, they don't do anything, they don't run any part of it, but somehow they're joint on the accounts or joint or whatever it is. So, when a court is looking at what to do with something like your business in a divorce case, they look at statutes. It's all statutory. So it isn't just they decide to do whatever they feel like. They have to have the authority, the power to make decisions. And Michigan compiled laws, MCL 552.401, discusses the court's ability, their authority to award property. So basically, they're allowed to divide property in a way that is deemed equitable. So it's not necessarily 50-50, but of course that can be a good thing for you as a business owner. It means that you're not automatically going to lose half your business just because you're getting divorced. So first strategy would be to establish this business as a separate property. Keep it separate. Make sure it's clear that you're the one running it, you're the one doing everything. Because that's how a lot of businesses are. It's kind of unusual that a husband and wife are both running a business equally. It happens, but not really what we're talking about here. So keep it separate. Your second strategy on how to protect your business in a divorce case is to get an unbiased, aggressive business valuation. You want to make sure that gets done, that you have the right person valuing your business. If you can, you could use somebody joint, but you really need to make sure that this person is going to value it properly, that they're looking at things like the goodwill of the business, what kind of liabilities you have, what kind of future debts you have, but they're also looking at the realistic value of this business. What does this business look like if you go to try to sell it? Are you the only one running it? Is it, let's say it's a dental practice and you're the only dentist? Well, that definitely does affect the value of it. It's not as simple as, I'll just sell it to someone else and they'll run it and it'll be worth exactly that same amount. So you want to get a proper business valuation, make sure you're talking to somebody that's an expert and getting proper advice about all that. If you can use the same expert, you can do that. That can be a little tricky. So you want to make sure that you're getting good advice about how to get an expert, what kind of value they're going to do for your valuation they're going to do on your business, and go from there. You also want to implement immediate financial separation. If a divorce is happening, divorce is starting, you want to make sure that you're setting up things separately. Don't commingle the funds. Don't have your wife using the business account if she's not someone that works there and has no reason to be using it just because you're married. And don't pay personal bills out of your business account. Don't pay your mortgage, your utilities, or whatever things out of your business account. Make sure you're just paying separate things, business expenses through your business. And make sure you understand what access your spouse has to the business accounts, to business checking, a savings, whatever it is that's in the name of the business. Make sure that if they have access to that sort of bank account, that they have that access to it, and that you understand why they have access to it. And then next strategy with this whole thing with getting divorced and being a business owner is look at non-cash buyout sort of options. Look at the idea that you don't have to just borrow money and cause a bunch of liability and a big debt every month that your business is going to have to pay. If it's determined your business is worth $1 million and you have $1 million in retirement, that goes a long way to figuring out what to do with that expense and how to buy out your spouse. Assuming your spouse has a right to half the business in the first place. They might. If you've been married long enough, it certainly could be the case. The way Michigan law is, we're what's called a dual property state. So we divide property, real estate, business ownership, whatever it might be, and whatever assets, we divide those into 2 categories. There's separate property and there's marital property. So separate property are things that you acquired separately, something you might have had before the marriage. Marital property would be things that you acquired during the marriage or things you started during the marriage, such as you started a business during the marriage, you've been running that business the whole time you're married, could definitely be considered marital property. So then marital property tends to get divided half and half or equitably. Separate property gets kept separate, meaning you don't have to pay your spouse part of that property. So, there's some examples here, some case law in Michigan. There's a case called Hanaway versus Hanaway, where a wife received a huge portion of the husband's business despite having never worked there. It can definitely go that way. If it's seen as a joint asset of your marriage because you started it during the marriage and you've been running it this whole time, it certainly could happen that way. There's also a way to keep businesses separate, to keep assets separate from your marriage and not have to pay 50% to your spouse. So you want to look at these non-cash buyout options. You want to look at, is there a way to do a structured payment? Is there a way to do spousal support or alimony or something like that in lieu of having to actually borrow money and buy out your spouse immediately? Or maybe it's a question of real estate. Maybe your wife gets the house and you keep the business, and that's maybe somewhere close in value. So then another strategy you would want to do is you want to address the reputation and control of the business immediately. The impact of your divorce could affect your business. You want to make sure you have protective orders, have things in place so that your spouse isn't going to go and start taking money out of bank accounts or taking money out of accounts she has access to through the business. You want to look out for those kind of things. Those things can be big problems. Another strategy in a divorce, and you're a business owner, and what do you do to try to protect things? Another idea here would be to, we talked about keeping separate finances. You want to make sure you have detailed records, make sure you're doing a profit and loss statement, make sure those are up to date monthly, not just quarterly, and that there's a detailed accounting of income, expenses, cash transactions, if there are any. Make sure you're paying yourself a salary. You want to make sure that things are set up properly. So if somebody's looking at this in your divorce case, that it's on the up and up, it all seems legit. You're drawing a salary, and there's some other income that you receive, but primarily we've got these W-2 wages. We want to be looking at those. You also want to look at having a buy-sell agreement is a good strategy. The buy-sell agreement can dictate what happens if one of the partners gets a divorce and how that's going to look. And it's not that controls everything, and your spouse, your wife would then be stuck with that. But it certainly goes a long way towards valuing the business, getting a sense of how it's supposed to be bought out if something happens. You might also hear talk of something called a post-nuptial agreement. This is certainly, it's a strategy, it's a possibility, it's something to get advice about. Those can be pretty tricky, trying to have those actually be valid. So a post-nuptial agreement, it's sort of like a prenup, but it's done after you've already been married and you're married for a while, and maybe you're running into some trouble thinking about getting a divorce. So a post-nuptial agreement would basically work like this. You decide to get a divorce case, you get a divorce case filed and things are going along for you, and then you decide you're going to dismiss the divorce case and get back together. So you could do then a post-nuptial agreement that dictates what's going to happen with things like ownership of your business, who gets what, in the event that there is a divorce. So then you could create a post-nuptial agreement, have that written up, signed by both you and your spouse, and then you decide to dismiss your divorce case in exchange for this post-nuptial agreement. So in law, we would call that consideration. There's a term of art called consideration. So the idea would be, in consideration of dismissing your divorce case, you agree to sign this post-nuptial agreement that dictates what's going to happen if eventually you ever did get divorced at some point. Those can work if there was already a pending divorce and you dismiss the divorce in exchange or in consideration for signing the post-nup. That can work. If you just sign a post-nup and there's really no reason for somebody to sign it, you can't expect that to be valid, not in Michigan, the way Michigan law is on those things. And a post-nuptial agreement isn't going to just say like you get everything and she gets nothing, that kind of stuff. It has to be reasonable at the time it's signed and reasonable at the time you're doing it, but it can certainly help you protect things, help you keep things in line. So hopefully those are some strategies that'll help you. It's a lot to think about, but nothing you can't handle with divorce, with dividing things with your business. And if you're looking for what to do next here, you could watch one of our other videos, Top 5 Things to Avoid in a Divorce. It'll be on your screen.